To get a story entirely wrong is terrible in 2024. I mean, they knew they could call a number of sources to confirm their story, and apparently they didn't do that.
Let me ask you this. Have you spoken to the brothers about their release, and maybe also what would they do if they were released?
In 2023, former Menudo band member Roy Rosselló made shocking claims that reignited interest in the notorious Menendez brothers case. José Menendez, the father of Lyle and Erik, wasn't just a powerful RCA Records executive. Rosselló alleged he was also an abuser. These revelations have the potential to uncover disturbing secrets behind the 1989 Beverly Hills murders that stunned the world. Were Lyle and Erik cold-blooded killers, or were they retaliating against years of hidden abuse? Join us as we explore what Netflix's Monsters left out about the Menendez brothers' story. The Menendez brothers, Lyle and Erik, have been at the center of one of America's most infamous criminal cases, and recent developments have reignited interest in their story. Notably, former Menudo member Anthony Rosselló has come forward with grave allegations against Edgardo Diaz, the founder and manager of the boy band, as well as José Menendez, the father of the convicted killers. Rosselló asserts that during his time in Menudo, from ages 13 to 16, Diaz sexually abused him. He recalls a particular incident when, at the age of 14, Diaz allegedly arranged for him to visit the Menendez family home in New Jersey, where José Menendez drugged and raped him. In a powerful clip from a Netflix docuseries, Rosselló labels Menendez a pedophile and identifies him as his abuser, stating, "I know what he did to me in his house." In another scene, he points to Menendez in a photograph, exclaiming, "That's the man that raped this guy. That's the pedophile." These chilling revelations prompt us to examine the broader context of the Menendez brothers' tragic story. In the same docuseries, Erik Menendez appears to affirm Rosselló's claim in a conversation with journalist Robert Rand. Erik recounts an incident where José Menendez took a young boy to the upper floor of their home for a private discussion. While Erik does not name the boy or divulge the detail of what took place, his recollection leaves open the chilling possibility that José had an opportunity for unsupervised interaction with Rosselló. The resurgence of interest in the Menendez case coincided with the airing of the Monster series Season 2 on Netflix, which shifted its focus from a singular serial killer to the complex narratives of the Menendez brothers, who murdered their parents in Beverly Hills in 1989. The series navigates conflicting interpretations surrounding the case: the brothers' claims of enduring abuse at the hands of their parents as a motive for the killings, versus the prosecution's assertion that greed drove their actions. By exploring these opposing perspectives, the docu-series immerses viewers in the ambiguous moral landscape that characterized the real-life trial, allowing audiences to form their own conclusions. However, the accuracy of the portrayals remains contentious, with many questions surfacing about the fidelity of the series to the actual events and emotions involved. To truly grasp the intricacies of the Menendez brothers' case, it is essential to understand their upbringing and familial background. José Menendez was born in Havana, Cuba in 1944, a product of privilege whose life was irrevocably altered by the Cuban Revolution. Eventually relocating to the United States, he became a high-achieving entertainment executive after graduating from Southern Illinois University. José's ascent to wealth symbolized the classic immigrant success story, propelling him into elevated positions at RCA Records and Live Entertainment. In contrast, Kitty Menendez, born Mary Louise Anderson, grew up in a small Midwestern town and eventually married José after meeting him in college. Initially a school teacher, Kitty devoted herself to homemaking as the family's fortunes flourished, raising their two sons, Lyle and Erik. To the outside world, the Menendez family epitomized the American dream: wealth, status, and achievement. Yet, beneath this facade lay a tumultuous home life riddled with issues exacerbated by José's domineering personality and high expectations for his children. Growing up in an atmosphere cloaked in privilege but steeped in stress, Lyle and Erik were often subjected to intense pressure. José was a powerful figure in the entertainment industry and sought similar success for his sons, grooming Lyle for a career in business and pushing Erik toward athletic excellence, particularly in tennis. This ambition placed immense strain on the boys. The suffocating expectations imposed by their father created an emotionally charged atmosphere, full of tension and fear, one where failure was not an option. Academic pressures and the quest for excellence left little room for the boys' individual expression or personal growth. As Erik and Lyle navigated their childhoods, The overwhelming burden of their father's ambitions and the dysfunction within their family set the stage for the tragic events that would follow. Understanding this background not only sheds light on the infamous murders, but also elucidates the deep-seated issues that permeated the Menendez family, issues that continue to resonate in conversations about abuse, power, and the complexity of familial relationships. Erik Menendez faced immense pressure to meet his father's high expectations, particularly regarding his athletic pursuits. Tennis, meant to be a source of personal identity, became an overwhelming source of stress as José Menendez relentlessly pushed Erik to excel in the sport. In contrast to his more outgoing brother, Lyle, Erik tended to be reserved and internalized much of the emotional strain that accompanied the quest to satisfy José's demands. José was known for his controlling nature, while their mother, Kitty Menendez, struggled with her own challenges, particularly mental health issues like depression and alcoholism. Over time, Kitty's marriage to José became increasingly fraught, further eroding family stability. The brothers often described her as emotionally volatile and distant, lacking the nurturing support they desperately needed. This emotional distance, combined with José's harsh parenting style, fostered a toxic environment for Lyle and Erik. They felt abandoned by a mother too consumed by her own demons and too intimidated by José to intervene. As the family dynamic deteriorated, tensions would ultimately escalate to a tragic climax. On August 20th, 1989, after years living under their parents' authoritarian control, Lyle and Erik made the harrowing decision to murder both José and Kitty in cold blood. Growing resentment over their father's oppressive behavior and their mother's emotional neglect fueled the brothers' desperation. They claimed that the years of alleged psychological, emotional, and sexual abuse at the hands of their father pushed them to a breaking point where they felt there was no escape from their toxic family environment. That fateful night, Lyle and Erik armed themselves with shotguns and waited for their parents to settle in at their upscale Beverly Hills mansion. Unbeknownst to José and Kitty, they were about to become victims of an unspeakable act. Lyle was the first to act, entering the den and shooting his father in the back of the head, killing him instantly. In a state of shock, Kitty attempted to flee, but Erik fired at her, hitting her in the leg and causing her to collapse. Despite her pleas for mercy, the brothers fired multiple shots, brutally ending her life. The aftermath of the killings was gruesome. José's body was hardly recognizable, while Kitty's was riddled with gunshot wounds. To deflect suspicion, Lyle and Erik staged the scene to resemble a mob hit, ensuring their parents were shot multiple times and even reloading their weapons to survive. Following the murders, they attempted to conceal their involvement, disposing of the weapons and going to the movies to establish an alibi. Upon returning home, they called the police, pretending to be devastated by the discovery of their parents' body. Initially, investigators entertained the idea that organized crime was involved due to the brutality of murder. Lyle and Erik played the part of grieving sons, but their extravagant spending, around $700,000 shortly after the murders, raised suspicion. They purchased a $60,000 Porsche, hired a $50,000 a year tennis coach for Erik, and funded a $550,000 cafe for Lyle, drawing public attention and doubt. The turning point came when Erik, stricken with guilt, confessed the crime to his therapist, who reported it to authorities out of fear for his own safety. This led to the brothers' arrest and ultimately set the stage for one of the most publicized murder trials in U.S. history. The trial began in 1993, captivating the nation as two narratives clashed in the courtroom. Prosecutors argued that Lyle and Erik acted out of greed, desiring their parents' wealth, while the defense, led by attorney Leslie Abramson, sought to paint the brothers as long-suffering victims of abuse. Abramson asserted they lived in constant fear of their father, believing their actions were a necessary act of self-defense. This dramatic juxtaposition of narratives would unfold before the public eye, leaving a lasting impact on how society views familial abuse and the ways in which it can manifest in unimaginable tragedies. The Menendez brothers' trial was not merely a case of murder, it was a complex interplay of narratives, one that exposed the deeply rooted psychological effects of familial abuse, while also highlighting the broader societal questions about innocence, guilt, and the often blurred lines in abusive relationships. As the jury deliberated, the nation awaited a verdict in a case that had captivated and polarized public opinion, revealing the enduring impacts of trauma and the quest for justice in the most heartbreaking circumstances. Abramson sought to expose inconsistencies in the prosecution's case and aimed to humanize the brothers' experiences, emphasizing that years of turmoil had led them to genuinely believe their lives were in danger at the hands of their father. With the trial drawing to a close, it became clear that the jury's perceptions were heavily influenced by the prosecution's narrative and the limitations imposed on the defense. In another impactful blow to the defense, Judge Stanley Weisberg significantly restricted the amount of testimony allowed concerning the alleged abuse. The emotional weight that had previously resonated with jurors in Erik's testimony was now muted. Instead of a central theme of psychological trauma, the abuse claims were relegated to context merely elucidating family dynamics, rather than justifying the brothers' heinous conduct. While Leslie Abramson, the defense attorney, continued to assert that Erik and Lyle acted out of fear, the courtroom atmosphere became increasingly hostile to their arguments. Additionally, the prosecution presented evidence of the brothers' elaborate cover-up efforts. The staged crime scene and their alibi, going to the movies immediately after the killing, were portrayed as deliberate attempts to mislead investigators, casting doubt on their assertion that the murders were acts of desperate escape from a... Throughout the trial, Erik and Lyle's behavior after the murders further complicated their defense. Witnesses described how the brothers appeared carefree and eager to indulge in their newfound wealth. Their actions and demeanor did not align with those of mourning sons. Instead, they seemed to revel in their financial freedom. This dissonance between their behavior and their claims of fear struck a significant blow to their defense narrative. The prosecution didn't merely focus on their spending habits. They questioned the credibility of the brothers' abuse allegation, pointing out inconsistencies in their testimony. They argued that the absence of physical evidence supporting the abuse claims undermined the brothers' credibility, suggesting that their narratives were fabrications designed to elicit sympathy and distract from their financial motives. As the trial progressed, the defense faced challenges in maintaining the same level of persuasive narrative witnessed in the previous trial. The limitations imposed by the judge and the prosecution's concentrated focus on the brothers' motivations combined to sway jurors' perceptions against the Menendez brothers. The prosecution seized this opportunity to reinforce their narrative, framing the murders as premeditated acts motivated by greed. They emphasized the brothers' extravagant spending spree immediately following their parents' deaths as evidence of their true intentions. The prosecutor, Deputy District Attorney David Kahn, meticulously detailed how Lyle and Erik used their inheritance to purchase luxury items, including high-end vehicles and designer clothing, portraying them as opportunistic killers rather than terrified sons seeking to escape a dangerous home. This second trial, commencing in 1995, adopted a notably different tone. The most significant change was the judge's decision to bar cameras from the courtroom and enforce stricter limitations on the defense's arguments. As a result, the defense struggled to present Erik and Lyle's alleged abuse with the same emotional depth that characterized the first trial. Although they could still reference the abuse, the level of detail and emotional testimony was curtailed significantly. The first trial culminated in January 1994, resulting in deadlocked juries, one for Lyle and one for Erik. The jurors were deeply divided on whether the brothers' claims of abuse could justify or mitigate their actions. Some jurors were moved by their accounts, while others believed that the murders stemmed solely from greed and entitlement. Unable to reach a unanimous verdict, the judge declared a mistrial, setting the stage for a second trial. The defense's strategy proved to be a double-edged sword. It shifted the focus from the murders to the pervasive psychology of abuse, consequently drawing public attention to the complexities of abusive family relationships and the potential for trauma to precipitate extreme, desperate action. The trial was heavily televised, allowing cameras into the courtroom to capture every tense moment. This decision fueled public interest, evolving the trial into a national spectacle, with millions tuning in to witness the brothers' emotional testimonies and the legal arguments presented by both sides. The courtroom drama evoked comparisons to soap operas, owing to the intense nature of the allegations and the emotional outbursts characterizing the proceedings. Lyle, too, substantiated Erik's claims, recounting his own traumatic experiences. He described how José's abusive behavior not only targeted them, but also extended to their mother, Kitty. The defense portrayed Kitty as emotionally unstable and neglectful, highlighting her struggles with alcoholism and mental health issues. Their portrayal depicted her as a victim of the family dynamics rather than a protective mother, a narrative that aimed to garner empathy for the brothers, positioning them as victims of a toxic household rather than cold-blooded murderers. The trial of Lyle and Erik Menendez became a sensational media event, transforming a tragic family drama into a courtroom spectacle. As the case unfolded, Erik took the stand to provide heartbreaking testimony about the abuse he had suffered throughout his childhood. He spoke of years of sexual molestation that began when he was just 6 years old, alongside instances of emotional and physical abuse at the hands of their father, José Menendez. Erik detailed how his father would use humiliation and threats to maintain control, presenting himself as an omnipresent figure of fear in their lives. In the complex and emotionally charged trial of Lyle and Erik Menendez, the lack of the powerful emotional testimony that had swayed jurors during the first trial significantly impacted the defense's strategy. This second trial took place without the detailed psychological context that had previously framed the brothers' experiences and actions. Leslie Abramson, the defense attorney, was unable to weave the intricate narrative of abuse and trauma, which had been the cornerstone of her argument in the earlier proceedings. One crucial difference between the trials was that the second trial was not televised. This absence meant that the public could no longer witness the dramatic emotional performances that characterized the first trial. The jury was no longer under the external pressure created by media speculation and sensationalism, allowing them to focus solely on the evidence presented in court, without the influence of the emotional spectacle that had surrounded the initial trial. As the second trial progressed toward its conclusion, the prosecution delivered a compelling closing argument. They reiterated their position that Lyle and Erik had brutally murdered their parents for financial gain, emphasizing the lack of hard evidence supporting the brothers' allegations of sexual abuse. Their arguments suggested that such claims could have been fabricated as a means of avoiding conviction. Prosecutors pointed out that José and Kitty Menendez had provided their sons with numerous opportunities for success, effectively arguing that the brothers' violent actions were those of entitled young men seeking their parents' wealth, rather than desperate individuals motivated by fear. The jury, now presented with a notably narrower and prosecution-focused narrative, deliberated for a significantly shorter time compared to the first trial. In March 1996, both Lyle and Erik Menendez were found guilty of first-degree murder. In addition to the murder charges, the jury also convicted them of conspiracy to commit murder, dismissing the defense's assertion that the brothers' actions were driven by fear and ongoing abuse. The court sentenced them to life in prison without the possibility of parole, marking a significant victory for the prosecution that had faced immense public skepticism following the first trial's results. The Menendez case had captivated America, not only because of the horrific nature of the crimes, but also due to the intricate family dynamics at play. Ultimately, the jury sided with the prosecution's argument that the Menendez brothers had murdered their parents for financial gain, leading to their harsh sentences. This outcome concluded a lengthy and arduous legal battle that had drawn years of public attention. However, lingering questions remained about the true nature of the Menendez family and whether the brothers were cold-blooded killers or traumatized victims of abuse. The debate over their motivations persisted even as they began serving their sentences in California's prison system. The conviction of Lyle and Erik Menendez became a landmark moment in American legal history, highlighting crucial issues around familial abuse, violence, and the motivations underlying one of the most shocking crimes of the era. This fascination with the case eventually inspired Netflix to produce a documentary exploring various facets of the Menendez murders. The Netflix documentary titled Menendez plus Menudo, Boys Betrayed, delves into the murder trial while also examining allegations of abuse made by Roy Rosselló, a former member of the boy band Menudo, who claimed that José Menendez molested him. The documentary takes a multifaceted approach by integrating archival footage, interviews with key figures, and dramatized reenactment, aiming to shed new light on the defense narrative. The filmmakers suggest that the abuse suffered by the Menendez brothers, not merely a desire for financial gain,